Hey there, it's Simon Hurley from Inklips and welcome to another video. I'm filming this while I'm sick, so if I sound a little bit weird, that's why. But we're powering through, and today I'm going to be sharing how to create some surprise pop-up cards. So the pop-up portions are on the inside of the card, so when your recipient opens it, they get that little surprise. And also, these are really mail-friendly, so they flatten down, and I had to make sure of that so you can send them really nicely off through the mail. So for the stamping on my first card here, I'm using this Mouse Tea Party stamp set that's new from Hero Arts, and I really love this little set, so I'm going to use those two little mice and create a scene. And I also liked the sentiment that says long time no tea, let's catch up, but I wanted to use one of those sentiments on the outside and then finish it on the inside. So I'm just going to take my little mini scissors here and cut right down that sentiment. Now this won't harm the sentiment, it's not going to scream. You can always mount it back and use it how it was originally intended on an acrylic block, but I like that because then you can use it separately and get a little bit more use out of it. So I'm creating the scene in my MISTI stamping tool here, and I'll pick up the images, and then I can ink those up and stamp them down with the Memento TUXEDO black ink, so it's nice and Copic friendly. Now this magnet was a little bit in the way there, so I decided to stamp it again, and since it's in the MISTI, it'll go right back exactly on top of each other how it was. So then after I've stamped my scene, I'm ready to start my coloring here. Now I do really simple Copic coloring, nothing too special, and this is just for the front of the card, so I wanted to keep this kind of simple too, since the inside of the card is having that surprise portion in it. So for the coloring, I used about 3 different shades of each marker to color these in. I didn't worry too much about blending, but I just added some shading wherever there would be a little bit on the image and kind of just all around it. So I blended that out using the couple different kinds of markers there. And then for the ears, I'm using a little flesh tone pink kind of color here and blending it out with the colorless blender marker. So after I'm done with that, I'm going to create a little grounding area for these mice to sit on so they're not floating. And I'm using some greens here to create some little blades of grass, and I'll do this in 3 different colors here, so there's a little bit of variation in the different blades of grass, and this is a good way to make a little grounding point for your little mice to sit on. So after I've added all those 3 colors on, I'm coming in with my colorless blender to kind of blend it all together and make the lines a little bit less harsh. So after I've done that, I'm also using the Woodland Tea Party stamp set for my next card here, and I'm going to create a scene with those 2 little animals on there. I love how in both of these sets there's little animals that are kind of facing each other and then larger ones as well. And I'll stamp that down with the same kind of scene in my MISTI here. So the 2 fronts of the cards are going to be very similar, and then the inside are going to have the 2 pop-up portions. So again here, I'm just going to do some really simple Copic coloring with about 2 or 3 markers for each little animal here. And you'll notice some of my Copics are kind of running out here. It'll be a little more evident with some of the colors, so I definitely need to pick up some refills for those. But I just like to keep it super simple, and you could create a whole scene if you wanted to and really color around here. I know some people are really amazing at that. So then for the little hedgehog's prickles there, I'm going to add a couple different shades of brown to kind of variate it a little bit. And then I'm going to go in with my colorless blender to blend all that out, and that just kind of helps to soften some of the colors and smooth it all out. So then to finish this little panel off here, I'm going to create a little grounding place just like I did on the other panel. So I'm going to do this one in a couple different shades of brown to make it look like kind of dirt. And I find that this really helps to ground your animals, and it gives a huge drastic look difference on your cards. So just scribble some color down and then blend it out with some colorless blender, and it looks really awesome for creating some shadows and depth on the card. So now I'm taking some of the larger images from the 2 sets. So I have this big mouse with the little coffee cup there, and I also have this big bear, and these are going to be the 2 interactive portions on the inside of my card. So I'm using both of these images for that, as well as the little bear's teacup there. So here I'm going to start coloring in my images, and it gets pretty evident right here that my marker is pretty dry. I need to pick up a couple different refills, but I'm just going to go in like I did with the other images and color it pretty similar to those. I don't really do anything fancy, but you could add like a fur texture. I'm just going in with a couple colors and shading here and making sure they're nicely blended, but you could also just color with 1 or 2 markers and just keep the color really nice and simple because you want your card design to stand out. So I'm throwing down some shadows as well on that little bear where there's some lines drawn on the stamps. Those can sometimes help with your shading and know where to add the shading on the stamps, so it's always nice when those are in there. So then I'm going to blend all that color out, and then I'll move on to my little mouse here. So for the mouse, I'm going to do a similar thing as well. I'm just going in with one of that gray colors there, and then I'll go in with a little bit darker of a gray color to kind of blend that out and add some shadows. And then to finish that off, I'm doing the ears as well in that same kind of skin tone color there, and I'll blend that out with the colorless blender to make it nice and soft. And I'll also do that on the little stomach area there to kind of finish that little image off. So then after I've colored all of these portions in, I'm going to use the coordinating dies to cut these little images out so we can add them onto the inside of our card as those interactive pop-up portions. So for the first example here, when your recipient opens the card, the mouse stands up on its own and kind of goes along with that top flap there. So I'm going to take a piece of cardstock that's kind of the size of an A2 side folding card. It's a little bit less than that, so it'll go inside of the card with a little border around it. And then I'm going to score it right in the center and crease that down there. Now I'm going to cut two little lines that are the same equal length in that fold of the cardstock where I want my image to stand up and be. And you could really create a whole scene here. So if I went with a couple different animals and maybe some little pieces here, but I wanted to keep it nice and simple. So then I'll take that piece and put it inside out here, and then I'll fold it down along with the card and make sure it's nice and creased before we add our image on there. So I'm going to push that down, and you can also use your bone folder here to make sure the lines are really crisp and folded. So when you open that up, you'll see that little kind of boxed area there. And this will be where we're going to add our mouse. So I've added a little bit of Be Creative or score tape onto there. And then I'm going to lift the card up, how it's going to be opened, and add the mouse right on top of there. So this is how it's going to look when it's opened. When the recipient opens it, the mouse is standing up and it's like a nice little 3D image. So I'll stamp the Let's Catch Up sentiment. That was the second part of the sentiment I had on the outside. And then I'll add that onto the inside of my card base here. So I made sure that it was sticking down to that top panel there. And then I'll add some adhesive onto the bottom panel, and I'll add that portion down as well, because you want to make sure it's nice and lined up with that fold so that when you fold your card down, it works really nicely. So for the second card here, I'm going to do a little image that shakes and wobbles around, but still keeps it nice and mail friendly so it flattens in the mail. I'm going to add the little teacup with a glue pen here. This one's from Nuvo, and it just helps to add some little adhesive onto the back of that and stick it right down into that bear's paw there. So then I'm going to add the sentiment right on the inside that says meet me for a spot of tea, so that kind of finishes off the sentiment from the front. And then here I'm grabbing an action wobbler. This is the larger kind. I know they sell a smaller kind, but I don't happen to have those. So I decided to just cut off little portions of this to fit on the inside. But basically this is a little plastic spring with adhesive on both sides. So it helps to move around your image, but it's really collapsible as well. And you'll see that in just a second here. So I peeled off the backer sheet of the top there, and I'm going to add that portion down to my image. So this is really sticky on there. It's got a really strong adhesive to hold that in. You can kind of see that spring there. And then I'm going to peel off the back portion of the bottom, and I'll stick that right down onto my card where I want it to stand so that it can shake and twist when it's on there. So I just want to add it down where I wanted it to be, and then push it down really nicely. And you might even want to put your fingers behind it to make sure that it stays down. But here you can see how nicely that spring collapses. So if you want to send it through the mail to your recipient, it will really go nicely through the mail. So then I'm going to add this onto the inside of my card there. So that's the little surprise pop-up portion on the inside. And this front panel adheres really nicely on the front of that with some foam tape, so it pops it off the card. So that finishes it off for these two cards. I kept it really simple, but I really like how when your recipient opens the card, they get those fun surprise pop-up and interactive panels on your card, and I think it's a really fun way to use your images. So this post is actually a part of the Hero Arts 2018 catalog blog hop. This is really fun because they're releasing a bunch of new products, and I got to use a couple of them in this video today. So be sure to hop along my blog hop link down below and hop along with some of the fabulous designers as well that are a part of this hop. So here on screen, I'll have 2 more videos linked for you, and also click that link over to my blog to continue on the hop and see more info on these cards, as well as clicking that subscribe button to never miss another crafty video like this one. I'll see you guys very soon. Have a great day. Bye.